Hello, this is Hope Roski with Briggs on Books, and today our special guest is Richard Hinkie. Richard, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. And your timing is terrific because
Uh,
there was big news on the news about careers just today.
well, I am so glad, and I know you are authored, Richard Hinkie, but you like to be called Rick, and that's how I'm going to address you through the show. Don't want to confuse the viewers, but Rick, your specialty is, your focus is careers. And there's so many, when you talk about careers, that's such a wide topic, but within that, there's so many different sections that you have expertise. And people sometimes, as they, and you are the career doctor, I know you usually have your stethoscope in your white jacket.
Maybe next time.
Next time, right? We'll just pretend like you have it on right now. But one of the things is, people sometimes go through these transitions in careers. They are thinking, am I in the right place? Or I went to college for this degree, but this is really not what I want. And they go through this internal tug of war. How do you address that internal tug of war for people who set out to be on one career path but realize this is not for me?
Yeah, well, very, very, very wise question, first of all.
Thank
I
you.
did a book earlier, and that one was more about how do you get promoted. As I then interviewed other people after that book came out, and I just was in the Star Wars exhibit at Disney World. So, I'm talking to young Disney employees, right, about this very issue. What is it about Disney and what is it about your life? And the gist of it is people today, young folks in particular, are not so much wanting to be the CEO. They want a satisfaction. They want a job that they enjoy, that bring, obviously we all need food on the table, and a roof over our heads. That goes without saying. But there's lots of ways to do that. My expertise is not so much in the type of work, but more in whatever work you're doing, what can you do to get more out of it? What can you do to feel better about it, to get promoted if that's what you want, or new opportunities or what have you. So that's kind of the gist of it. And I had a fortunate career. Things fell into place. I don't know whether I really ever had a career plan, but one of the things that not young folks, anybody with careers, only 8% ever make a career plan. Like you said, and maybe in college they thought, well, I'll take this, this course of study and then I'll be a journalist or I'll be a whatever, right? But it's more than that. It's more than that. What kind of organization do you want to work for? Could you work for a company that maybe doesn't have a great reputation but pays well? Could you work for a company where it's maybe politically way some direction that it's not you? That kind of stuff. So those are part of the plan. And then what kind of daily activities do you want to do? So there's a lot of considerations. And the website, and I appreciate you guys sharing that, is just, it's your7keys.com. And so we're not trying to sell anybody anything. There are 2 free downloads there. One of them is how to make a career plan. And the second one is kind of like you get an annual physical, right? Making sure that everything's good. Well, there's a form there now called Career Check-Up Worksheet and Checklist. So you can download that and then walk yourself as a viewer of yours, a listener of yours. Okay, well, where am I? How am I doing? Are there things I could do better? That kind of stuff. So it's all there. And it's based on, I had the pleasure over the years, everything from the Pentagon to corporate world. I ran a trade association, and I worked at a Shakespeare theater with a knight of the British Round Table, etc. So anyway, I was fortunate, and so out of that, I picked 60 people. And I said, okay, and if you don't mind, Hope, you and I can role play here. So I'm talking to you, and you tell me, well, I was a nurse's aide at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, when I first started. And I'm going, okay, Hope, Well, now you're in charge of every single Mayo Clinic employee in the world.
Well,
What
that's a
did
big step up.
Yeah. So, so I'm chatting with this person, of course, and she's going, well, all right, no, let me think about that, right? Let me think about the things I did. Okay, well, I did that 59 other times. One other quick story. She actually was on the board with me of Habitat for Humanity in Payson, Arizona, and she was the former senior vice president for Victoria's Secret. And
Wow.
her name's Kathy Calcinice, and she grew up in California wearing hand-me-down clothes from the grandma across the street. So how did she get, from that beginning, right, all the way to be, and she also was the vice president for Steve Jobs at Apple.
That's
So,
highly
people,
impressive.
yeah, and so, it's not like, again, I don't want to leave the impression that you got to want to be the big dog, or dog-ess, as the case may be. but there are things you can do. You're going to work for what? 40 years, maybe? 4 decades, probably, right?
Yes.
I think I might have had hair. I don't know. Maybe when I first started, I'm not sure. Anyway, but, you're going to work a long time. So let's make the most of it.
Absolutely. And and even during that time, there are so many shifts that can happen, or what I call pivots, that one might need to make in a career. And we had talked about teaching and education,
Sure.
that even within that, do you move to administration? Are you going to move a grade level? I mean, that
Yeah.
whole what I call pivot process. But in your book, The 7 Keys to a More Satisfying Future at Work, one of the things, and I think has to be understanding the players involved within the organization, whether it's a business or even a school, if you will, and how that whole dynamic works. What are some of your ideas or suggestions for having a better understanding in that?
Okay, well, terrific question. I'll tell you, it's sort of as a catchphrase, and perhaps a lot of your listeners already have heard this, but one of the things you want to be at work is you want to be 2 things. You want to be a star where you are, and there are specific things in the book that can help you with that. But let's start out with, you need to be, quote, in the promotion pool. Okay? So if you can imagine in your head, literally, the corporate swimming pool, right? And all the people that are important are in that pool, and you need to be in there. And so what happened, and it happened to me, actually, I was doing really well in my department. I was in advertising and communications. But it was time for me to maybe move up to a director level. And that meant that vice presidents in other parts of the company needed to know who I was and trust me, because now I'm going to be elevated, maybe, right, to be part and work with their senior people. And nobody knew me. Nobody knew me except in that one area, right? So, and the promotion pool thing, what happened in HR, human resources, was back in the 80s and 90s, it got to be where there was a team of people, not just your boss, that helped decide whether Hope and Rick were going to move up, in their organization, right? So that's where this pool thing came from. And so there are some things that you can do. And one of the things I did, and others did too, was, maybe you need to volunteer for a committee. Maybe there's been a merger, or maybe it's for a charity, or there's some event going on that your company is sponsoring, maybe the food bank or something like that. So there's some things like that, that you can get involved in that make sense. There's also, reach out. You probably having coffee with your buddies that what if you called somebody from a different department and said, hey, talk to me, Hope, about what goes on in your life. What is it that we do in our department that affects you? Could we do something better, right? Or
So
explain.
Right. So there's 2 pieces. There's the networking piece,
Yes,
and then
yep.
there's the learning piece, because if you want to go out there and really learn about it's great. Let's say you are in a specific department, but in order to get ahead, you need to have an understanding of some other departments that are around that as well. So then you're basically getting out there to network and educate yourself about that.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and to use I'm sort of a Star Wars nut. So Obi-Wan Kenobi, by the way, is retired in Sun City, Arizona. And he has hired me to be Old B Rick Cannoli, his Italian cousin, and I do public appearances for him. So, I'm teasing, of course. But the idea is, if I am sort of Luke Skywalker, sort of a hero in my own area, right? Yeah, but wait a minute, where's Obi-Wan? Where's my coach? Where are these other people? I got to get along. So one of the other things is, and most people don't think about this, but almost every organization, nonprofit or for-profit, belongs to some kind of state, regional, or national association. Okay. Well, I was in the energy business, excuse me, way back. So I got involved in the American Gas Association with other people like me in utilities from across the country. And ultimately that involvement, I learned more about my own company and I learned about the industry. And so then I was more useful back at my own job because I had kind of the bigger picture.
Right.
So that's another tip, so to speak. And it's easy to find out, what your company's connected to. Usually on your website, a lot of employees never even go to their own company website.
And it is interesting because companies do have specific, I would call civic outreach programs that are a very big part of what goes on in the internal, and that is important for people to have a great understanding. These employees, it's not just that one specific thing. Get to know the broader picture because you never know which direction you might be going in a career.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, one time I had volunteered to help with a Habitat for Humanity event in Minneapolis. And it was a golf tournament, and it really went well, and we had lots of sponsors and what have you. So the president of the other company, not mine, happened to be having lunch with my president, and he said, that Rick guy really did a great job at the convention. We had blah, 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 and my president's going, who? So the point being, there are ways, and I didn't do that on purpose. I did it because it was the right thing to do. But these things do pay off, and they are specifically addressed, in the book. They're options. The book's not trying to tell you to do anything. It's just these are things that work for others.
Right.
So, depending on where you are, maybe some of these ideas will help you. So that's the intent.
Absolutely. Suggestions never hurt. Suggestions, ideas, they never hurt. One thing before we leave, I just wanted to share with the viewers what I find very heartwarming is that the funds that you are receiving from the 7 Keys of a Satisfying Future do not go to you directly, that you have a special fund, and I think the viewers would love to hear about that.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Our state, and I don't mean to be negative about Arizona, but it's not one of the better states for funding public education. And I live in a town that has the oldest continuous rodeo in America. So it's mixed between retirees of some success and, practical, everyday, hardworking people, right? So, but the high school doesn't have any advanced placement courses. So the young people can't get a head start on college, and for most of them, 4 years of college is out of the question anyway, financially. Okay, but some smart local folks have formed an organization that gathers in donations, and like the one I'm doing from the book, and those donations go to pay so the high school kids during the day can go to the community college.
And what a great thing to do, because truly they can use those college credits when they go to a 4-year institution.
Absolutely.
And they're one step ahead of the game, and it's so nice that you're providing those scholarships to the students who really need it most, because there are children who are just so extremely bright, gifted, if you will, that need to have that accelerated type education. So that's wonderful that you were providing that for them.
Well, we just had breakfast with about 200 of them, and one of the
Wonderful.
young women that was at our breakfast table, said, "Hey, I'm going to Arizona State University as a junior from high school." And she
I
said,
believe it.
there's no way I would get there." And then, ironically, I was into the heart doctor, and a young associate was doing an ultrasound on part of me, and turns out she's a graduate of the program, and said she never would have got her medical background without help from this program. So, I mean, the whole thing here is pay it forward. All 60 of these people, they didn't want anything from me. They spent hours with me. They reviewed everything. So, they just said, hey, for good or bad, my career was satisfying. I enjoyed it, and I'd sure like to share what worked. So that's
And then what is the name of the organization so the viewers can kind of
okay, okay, and it may exist elsewhere. I don't know. The one in Arizona is called Aspire, Aspire,
Aspire, Arizona. Okay, great. Now, before we wrap up, Rick, where can viewers order your book?
Okay, well, the easiest thing is your7keys.com.
Okay, so
And
go
there's
right to the
there's a
website.
button,
Okay.
Yep, there's a button there. They can order one signed and dedicated. If you want to give one to, a grandson or somebody, you can order that. That comes from me. But there's also a link, a button, to go to Amazon. And, I tease people. I say, is your career worth $1.95? Because that's all the Kindle book costs. It's only
Right.
$1.95, right? So
Right.
it's not about, again, trying to make a buck here, but so you can download it for that. I think Amazon might charge $13.95 or something for the book, but they can't provide autographed copies.
Right, and they can still take the surveys, correct, even on the downloaded Kindle?
Oh yeah, oh absolutely, yeah. I mean
Excellent.
that's for you. They're free. You don't even have to spend $1.95 to get those. So they're just there to help. They're just there to help.
Wonderful.
And if I mean, I'm happy to chat with people with, I can't obviously talk to the thousands and thousands, but if somebody has a specific question or whatever, use the contact page, and I'll do my best to get back to you. Yeah.
Well, Rick, thank you so much for being on the show today. I hope I get the opportunity to interview you again. It has been an absolute pleasure to talk to somebody from Arizona, because I used to live there for many years too. This is Hope Roski with Briggs on Books.
Thank you all.